Okay, brother. So thank you, first of all, so much. I'm just gonna say something really quick, and I'll see what you want to do. Okay. So when I asked you for this interview, maybe a month ago or so, I had just watched. I watched the 5G video, and I watched a couple other things, and a few of my good friends, or some good friends of yours, or at least acquaintances, and I thought, wow, there's some stuff that nobody's talking about that I feel like we could get into and pull out of them, you know, because I feel like you're doing some great work, and so and then I watched a David Steele video the other day, and sent it to a ton of my friends, and I said, hey, you guys, this is it, man. This is good stuff right here. This is like, check out all the info in here. And I had one guy say, you know, watch out for these guys, and sent me a link to a video. And so, you know, I watched it, and I had some questions, and, you know, I understand how, people talk and people say stuff. And, you know, I've had it myself. You know, we're doing some big stuff here, and anytime somebody's doing something big, you know, you get people talking. And so, you know, I just spent the last couple hours here, you know, just really kind of going deep down into the rabbit hole. And it looks like, you know, it's all kind of new stuff coming out. And so I'm assuming that you've seen it too.
No,
so,
I don't watch hatchet pieces on myself. There have been multiple done over the years, and I don't watch hatchet jobs on myself. No, I never do. Having said that, I've got lawyers, pretty powerful lawyers, actioning a couple of cases right now, which I'm not able to speak about. So leave it at that.
Okay, great. So, yeah, so the guy that sent it to me, you know, I said, hey, I'm doing this interview, and you know, I feel like he's doing some good work. And he said, well, this may be a great opportunity for
Ben, I'm just not interested in courting controversy or low frequency shit. I'll tell you that right at the starting gate. It's not my game. It's not what I do. I've spent 21 years in the public domain as a frontline activist. The work I do with Humanitad, with the NewEarth Project, with the NewEarth Nation, with the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, with the Judicial Commissions of Inquiry into human trafficking, child sex abuse, weaponization of the biosphere, conducting hundreds and hundreds of interviews, completely open source, is what it is. Anyone wants to focus on any turgid, low frequency shit about me being a fucking Satanist or a Luciferian, go to hell. I'm not having that conversation. I don't have the time. And anyone who has the time for that kind of turgid stuff is not the kind of person I'm going to put time into. It's really that simple. I'm not defensive about any of this stuff, but we're a world at the brink of catastrophic failure. And each one of us needs to decide where we're placing our attention roundabout now. It's really quite simple.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I didn't get as deep as Satanist stuff.
Well, I've heard everything leveled at me. Every single disgusting, filthy, venal activity I've been accused of for obvious reasons. Put two and two together. That's what you get when you put yourself on the line, as I've done year after year after year after year. And you can imagine how it feels when you have that kind of stuff being leveled at you, especially when there's been disenfranchised people who are claiming to have been close colleagues of yours, which they weren't. Again, there are legal suits coming up. Wait to see what happens. People may end up behind bars. That's all I'm going to say at this stage, okay?
Okay, good for you. Good for you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Let's focus on truth and disclosure, the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness, anything that is connected to affirmation, expansiveness, creativity, or truth. Otherwise, let's place our attention elsewhere.
Great. Okay. So what I want to know, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I feel like that's very useful. And so what I want to hear from you, and this was going to be my first question from the very beginning, is what do you feel like your life purpose is? What do you feel like you're here on the planet to to accomplish?
I've not sat and reflected on that. I'm interested in disentangling my own frustrations, my own anger, my own rage, connected to the trial of separation, connected to, you know, all of that stuff that we all variously suffer from, each of us. And that's all I'm interested in, is really getting to the bottom of the truth that I'm trying to discover in life. It's really quite simple. And, you know, my journey takes me to where my journey takes me. But it's not, hello, my screen's gone odd. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you. I can't see you, but I hear you.
Shut that door. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hear you.
Hello.
There you go. We're good.
I can't see
you.
you.
I hear you.
Oh, I can see you now. Thank you. Sorry,
Okay,
Ben.
we're good.
Ben,
No,
I'm interested in disentangling the fictions of my own life. I'm interested in exploring that stuff. I'm interested in learning about that and divining the truths from the fiction in my own reality. So
and where's that journey taking you right now?
Well, you know where it is, because it's pretty open source. It's taken me to the conversations I'm having very loudly and very boldly with this Corona COVID pantomime and what's going on there. It's taking me into the kind of catastrophic failure of our culture, our civilization, and the social economic modeling of the world. It's happening all around us. But how do we do the readings of the holographic reality? Are we able to elevate ourselves whilst participating, or at least experiencing, that catastrophic failure? Or is it something that takes us into the tailspin? These are the kind of things that, frankly, I'm interested in pursuing. It's really connected to the geometry of now, as it relates to my life, your life, this conversation, whatever's going to happen when I walk out the door. That's it. I'm not trying to, put it this way, I'm not trying to plan anything ahead, because, and I've spoken to this over the years, that anything behind and anything in the future is also connected to fear and to desire. And those two things are always enchanting us away from the living moment, the geometry of now. And I firmly believe, it's my conviction based on my experience, that we can only affect the outcome of reality if we are positioned absolutely in the now as the witness, and not being buffeted by fears or desires, not being, you know, looking over our shoulder or looking over the horizon, but really just being present with the living moment and going, okay, we're in a really fucked up situation planetarily. There's a lot of pain going down. There's a lot of ancient, arcane, bad stories, which are now being exposed to the light, so to speak. This is fascinating stuff, absolutely fascinating stuff. And we have to place our attention there. And we have to, but at the same time, it's about placing attention, but not becoming, how do you say, identified. Not becoming identified with it. That's for me the key thing. I don't want to get more and more entangled into the fictions. I would rather live in a quanta, a state of being, a state of witness, which was able to surf the holographic reality field as it's unfolding without becoming indentured even more into the deceptions, into the fictions. So for me, it kind of comes down to that always. And all my conversations eventually move into that space, talking about the masked and the unmasked, the living and the dead, the conscious and the unconscious, the souled and the unensouled, because I firmly believe that that's what this time is all about. The bifurcation, the alchemical separation of the wheat from the chaff. And that's why I was saying earlier at the beginning, at the starting gate, don't bring me into spaces which are emerging from the shadows with low frequency invitations to get involved in controversy and intrigue and all of that hoo-ha shit that maybe people are still at the soul level deeply infantile and feel the need to explore those shapes and those spaces. I don't. I've moved on from them. I'm really interested in solutions. But I believe we can only find the solutions if we place ourselves as a perennial witness to reality, not trying to escape from it, not trying to filter anything out, being very, very real and anchored in the now. And the solutions come to you. You don't need to look for them when you're in a state of witness, a state of grace. That much I have learned in my life.
And what are you noticing about human nature right now? You know, we talk about the wheat and the chaff, and we talk about truth and fiction and illusion, and you know, there really is a strong divide right now. And you know, people on the one side look at the people on the other side, and you know, we can't understand, and they look at us and they can't understand, and so you know, how do we reconcile this? And you know, is there a way to reconcile it?
Can't speak to anyone else's life, mate. I can only speak to the alchemy of my own. I'm not a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I'm never going to set myself up to be a teacher. I think anything that's that's trying to prognosticate for others is entering into false light territory. And I think that's also the beauty of where we're at right now. Let me say, at the meta spiritual level, there is a kind of decentralization happening at the fractal level, where monotheistic religions are breaking down. Great big collective movements like the European Union, the United Nations, the whatever, are all breaking down. Central banking is breaking down. All the grand deceptions of the Vatican complex and the Anglo-American complex and the conquesting imperial thrones and crowns of Europe, and all the colonization that they did around the world is breaking down. And it's coming down to the micro level, where each one of us is also realizing that we're cast adrift, because the Buddhist faith is not going to redeem us. Having a religious adherence, you know, or an ideology is not the thing. It's more about bringing it right back here to center court, which is in the center of me, and me owning my soul covenant, my journey to this realm, and me then emerging within that flame like the phoenix and saying, I am the living flame. I am the determiner of the outcome. I'm the architect, the engineer of this hologram, and I'm going to own that. Every minute of every day, I'm going to own this state of being. And that's connected to two things that I'm also banging on about, which is pure truth and right action as it relates to you in the now. And if you can place yourself on that throne, you are truly the king, the queen, the emperor. And then you are able to divine the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, time after time after time, and to manifest your highest calling, your highest expression as well. And at the end of the day, surely that's why we're here. Look at you, you're a creative. I can see that by looking at you. Everything about you it's textural, it's color, it's texture, it's spatial harmonics, it's intelligently conceived spaces and movement and articulation. We are creatives. That's why we were born, not to be fucking plantation slaves 2.0. to the goddamn fiction, the corporation government, or the Vatican 2.0, you know, rolling out as the Freemasonic bullshit happening through Hollywood and academia and all the rest of it. That is not why we were born. We were born here to be the creator incarnate in flesh. And there is nothing about that speaks sacrilege. That is about ownership. That is about soul sovereignty. And that is about standing in that Christed light.
Amen. Amen. Are you a reader of the Bible?
I'm not a reader of the Bible, but everything I've ever read in the Bible, more or less, has had a tremendous weight and beauty. And I see the most beautiful parables and metaphors out of the Bible. In the same way, I have to say to you, Ben, I see the same thing in the Torah, and I've seen the same thing in the Quran and the surah that I've read connected to the Quran. There are all the Sufi tradition for me is something which I've always found very beautiful. But the Bhagavad Gita, similarly, profound, beautiful. And there are more ancient tracts than that, in point of fact, that we can reference, going back to the Hermetic traditions. The written word to me is a beautiful thing to a point, and then it's a dangerous thing. I'm one of those who's a book burner more than anything else. I'll tell you why I say that. In the most puritanical perspective, I believe that all words are deceptions. I believe that the old Babylonian myth of mankind being separated into multiple languages and being set forth, you know, on the surface of the earth as separated tribes was all, that's a story that just speaks about our fall from grace and how we departed from prior unity as a species, as an integrated species. And that's part of the soul journey of discovery. So we've been scattered around the earth and we've broken up into different tribes and different sects and different ideologies and different memes. But then one looks at the word and sees how it was the word, the uttering of the word, which was the cry for help. It was the primal scream. The word was the thing that defined our trial of separation from pure truth and from Godhead. And then that became, you know, clever languaging. And then that became codified as religious mythology or ideology and gospel. And then we were all led into sectarianism, which led to wars and divisiveness and blood cultism and sacrifice of innocence. So let's be blunt, word has not served us as a species. So I think we've come to that point where we need to transmute and transcend all ideology, all theism, all words, and move back into the psionic intelligence, which is the telepathic calling. It's where we cannot lie to one another, because that spark in me that acknowledges the spark in you, if I'm in a state of witness and you walk into a room and I know how to witness in life, then I know exactly who you are when you walk in. There is in that flash, that spark, that fire in the eyes that is exchanged. We know each other. Absolutely, at the soul level. It's always a gift. People just take sometimes years to realize that we actually get everything we ever need about the other person in that first quantum instant of fire in the eyes. Doesn't matter if that person's going to be your husband or wife. You get the package. It's a quantum connection. And if you learn how to witness, you really understand whether this individual is going to serve or not. And then that becomes instinct and intuition, psionic intelligence. And ultimately, that's where our knowing exists, in the gut, in the psionic center. So I look forward to a world, frankly, where we return to that telepathic psionic intelligence of just sheer intuitive telepathic communication and knowing. And we only use utterance for the most divine reasons, which is poetry and song.
And what do you think it's going to take for us to get there as a planet? I mean, obviously certain communities can do that. Certain people who are well trained can do that. But most people on the planet right now are so far off, you know, and stuck in fear and anxiety and trauma and lower base needs that, you know, how do you expect us to be able to get to that point?
To me, it's something very simple, and I think it's going to happen very, very quickly. I'll be blunt. I think that within your lifetime, my lifetime, temporal terms, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, for sure, we're going to see a systemic return to that, because we can only but go there. There is nowhere else to go. We can't explore the Atlantean mindset or the Atlantean logic any further. We've taken it as far as it can go. We've taken it to bestiality, ritual sacrifice of innocence, blood cultism, war, disease, poverty, usury, and dream spell. We've taken it to the nuclear Armageddon, because we have already experienced that thermonuclear Armageddon. If you understand what's happening at the atmospheric level of depleted uranium frequencies and the damage that's being done to the fabric of human soul by the hundreds of thousands of detonations of atomic bombs and nuclear bombs and warheads over the last 50, 60 odd years. So that's very real, the damage that has been done to us, which is causing increasing entropy at the atomic and cellular level to all biological life forms. And it's also encasing the planet even further into this Atlantean firewall, this quarantine, or at least that's what has been happening. up until the 1987 harmonic convergence, then the 2012 crossover, and in point of fact, 2020 this year is another vital astrological dateline where we move even more exponentially into the vibral field of light that is impacting us at this quadrant of the galactic motion, the cycle that we're in. And so that vibral light that's impacting us is having a counterpoint to the Atlantean logic, of the low frequency logic, and is actually enlivening it and activating it, reactivating ancient codes inside all of us, which is what the great revelation is all about. Grace, the ascension, all of those apocryphal stories are speaking to exactly what's happening at the scientific level of frequency exchange right now, with the vibral light of the galactic plane impacting us and the Atlantean frequencies that have been locking us down into death, decay, disease, and entropy for generations, millennia, in fact, 12.5 thousand years for sure. We're now departing from that frequency bandwidth. And that means to those of us who have the knowing to see, we are moving into the immanent, immortal, ineffable reality, field of expression, which is what we left behind at the age of prior unity. It's all beautiful geometry. The question is, what have we learned at the soul level, individually and collectively, since our departure, since the fall, so to speak? Because the fall was not happenstance. It didn't happen to us. It wasn't an accident. It was soul covenant. It was divinely elected. And it happened. And it's taken us many, many thousands of years to get to this point. So here we are. Question is, what have we learned in this great galactic cycle? What have we learned?
What have we learned?
You tell me. You tell me. That's a question of each one of us having to divine that answer to ourselves. We have to divine that answer to ourselves.
Well, this isn't your first life on Earth. What have you learned?
I have no recollection of this world. I'll tell you straight up. I have none whatsoever. So maybe I've been here 1,000 times. I couldn't tell you that. What I know is in this incarnation, I'm born to be hermetically sealed against any remembrance. And I think that's a blessing, because it's forced me, it's compressed me into placing my attention and my plasma in absolute witness in the now, because I have no precognition or I mean, I have, you know, I've had epiphanies. I've had spiritual events in my life. I've had psychic attacks, and I've had psychic engagements, and I've seen gooks and spooks and things like that, like most of us have. And I've had some very, very extraordinary off-world engagements as well. But they've all happened in the now. They haven't been things that I had any kind of real premonitions of, and no remembrance of. So I'm not one of those people who carries this incredible logic stream that goes back lifetimes. What I can tell you is that I got a memory that goes back to when I was less than 6 months old. So I remember being a baby. I remember painfully being a baby. And I remember how long it took before I could clamber out of a goddamn pram and get on my feet, and then become an infant, and then move into, you know, that you know, childhood. And I felt like a very old man by the time I was 9, very old, because of that affliction I had of fluid memory from a baby. And I know that a lot of people don't have any recollection of that. Memory kind of dawned on them, I don't know, when they started becoming 5, 6, 7 or something. But I see it as being more of a curse than anything, because again, I felt so old by the time I hit my childhood. It wasn't fun.
What were the, I mean, it's interesting that you remember that early. What were the kind of things that you can remember at the earliest, your earliest age, that your parents were instilling in you? You know, I mean, we have 3 kids under 7, and, you know, we train our kids to, you know, kind of come in understanding who they are and what they are here to do. And, you know, what were your parents like?
I never knew my dad. I met my father for the first time when I went to England, about 16, 17. So I had no recollection of my father. My mum, I've always had a very close relationship with. And a lot of love in my childhood. But, you know, remember, I grew up in a war in Africa, and it wasn't a lot of fun from that perspective. It was a full-on, proper, nasty war going on from the time I was born all the way up until I left Africa. So it's hard.
Where was your dad? I mean, it sounds like, I mean,
my father was
where was your dad during the war?
In England.
Wow. Okay.
But my parents split when I was roundabout when I was born. And no, my father is not fucking Rockefeller and all that bullshit that's being said about me. No, my father's alive and well and living in Anglia in England. But yeah, and I love him very much. I met him when I finally arrived in England. But I had a lot of love as a child, that's for sure. But I was also, you know, thrown into boarding schools as a toddler. So I spent most of my life living in kind of military barracks style, asbestos, you know, infantry, you know, collapsible buildings out in the bush. Not much fun there, you know. So, but I can't look back and then and blame and have any expectations of my mother or my family, because, like I said, we're in the middle of a war, and it was dog eat dog, and they were trying to protect us kids by keeping us in safe, very safe, small enclaves in different parts of the bush with soldiers and military looking after us. And, you know, that was how I grew up.
Wow. How do you feel like that shaped who you are now?
Oh, entirely shaped me. Because it was so militaristic and patriarchal and oppressive and aggressive and scary and noisy and metallic. It was what forced me into divining the feminine aspect of myself and learning how to smooth those sharp edges and embrace the other. And so I thank my background for that reason. It forced that into me for sure. And then, of course, it forced me into a complete rejection of systems, of governments, of military, of police, of systems of control, manipulation, and control and supremacy. All systems disgust me because they're all about the harvest of life force, the control and the manipulation, the extraction of plasma, of life force of living souls, and then repurposing that life force into something else. Same reason why I hate football. I despise the cultism of competitive sports. I think it's just as toxic as pitch battles and wars. At the psychological level, psycho-intellectual, psychosexual, psycho-emotional level, psycho-spiritual level, the destructivity that is done to beautiful young boys and girls through competitive sports and competitive schooling is a travesty that would normally take us millennia to recover from, were it not for the grace of God. And that causes tremendous sadness to me.
Wow. Wow. Can you talk more about that and the sadness?
Yeah, but it's, you know, collectivism of any order of magnitude. The reason why I pulled out of rock and roll, and I've spoken about this on a number of occasions, was no, I'm not a failed musician. I'm the one who jokingly refers to myself as one. I just, you know, I'm surrounded with amazing, world-class, talented musicians in the Stone band, and, you know, we were set for great things. But there's a point at which I just had to acknowledge that the energetic exchange that I was seeing between myself and an adoring audience, you know, or whatever, was just not an exchange that was going to feed me at the soul level. And I also clocked, I was having a lot of psychic attacks and breakdowns at that time of my life. And I was really, because I was deeply involved in hard rock and that culture, which is very connected to Hollywood. And I was moving around a lot of stardom, a lot of high-end celebrity and good people, a lot of them very good people, some of them pretty dark, one imagines. I was never invited into the back room to, you know, to gargle on blood. But I've subsequently learned over the years that that's going on endemically. And God knows I've been one of the foremost voices in the last few years in bringing that and dragging that grisly story into the daylight, because I think foundationally it needs to be heard, it needs to be seen, it needs to be exposed and revealed. But the collectivism aspect of rock and roll, or of pop culture, or of sports culture, of any culture, in point of fact, is something which invites people to abnegate their own soul sovereignty and their own consciousness into a collective meme, where you become part of a group of people who all love the Rolling Stones, or love, you know, Manchester United, or love whatever the meme is. It's all memes. It's all collectivist energy harvesting memes. And if I put myself into that club, and the same thing with the Masons, secret societies, I despise them for the same reason. I've got friends who are Masons. I've met countless Masons. As in international leadership, one does. And I don't make any judgment about them wanting to go to a lodge, except to say that I'm assuming that most of the Masons I've met are pretty stupid people, because they would, if they were very high ranking, they would never let me know that they were involved in the first instance. And it's again collectivism. It's people abnegating their own trial of separation, not able to face up to the reality of needing to look within and light that fire within. So you join a secret society, you join a Masonic lodge, you join a whatever, a blood cult, and then you feel that there's purposefulness to your life. You feel that there's relevancy to your life. And I get it. I understand how most people march into the grave that way, without ever having stepped away from the collectivist culture and saying, I'm not going to follow false light worship or idolatry anymore in my life, whether it's football, rock and roll, or the Masons. I'm stepping back from all idolatry. I'm going to move into the innerscape. I'm going to familiarize myself with the I am. And in that place, I'm going to find the Grail. I'm going to find the Holy Sepulchre. I'm going to find the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to find the thing that I've been looking for externally, because it was only ever to be found within. This is a tired old story and a tired old metaphor, but it's true. It's only that. It's only ever to be found in the now, in your center, if you have the courage and the grace to go there. But alas, the vast majority of people, as I see it, as I understand it, fail in that inner calling for whatever reason. And alcohol and drug addiction, any addiction, helps to cover that up when that calling comes, that little tap. And the world externally, with all of the different archetypal ghouls and demons and, you know, that cling on to us and variously parasite off us at different levels of intensity. They're inviting us constantly. Don't go into that space. Don't go into the Christ of light. Come with me, you know. And so we're kept in this mortal realm in a state variously of enchantment, whether it's a crack pipe again, or it's a rock and roll concert, whatever. All external stuff is false light in that sense. Everything is illusory in that sense. For sure, Buddhism got it right with that. The great Maya, the great illusion. Except when you convene that covenant, that sacrament within, and you engage the state of witness, that point, everything that you see on the radar screen of the Maya, of the illusion, the holonomic reality field, has tremendous relevancy. It may be a hologram and you know it to be illusion, but you equally recognize the fact that in your life today, whatever is reflected or refracted onto that holographic screen is always aspects of oneself being projected, and a lot of unresolved aspects of self are coming back to harm you, to hurt you, to eat you, to devour you, which is why any negative thing that happens to you, the best you can do is recognize that that's an unresolved aspect of self to some great extent, and it's okay. The geometry of whatever it represents is okay. You don't need to be afraid of anything ever. And I think that's the point, to get to that point of recognizing that fearlessness is by definition, the state of grace that each of us is seeking.
And what helps you stay fearless? What anchors you in?
I'm a failure at it most of the time. I get a lot of adulation, a lot of praise, a lot of kindness thrown my way. A lot of people write to me. I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of people a day write to me. I can't get through most of it, and I must be a crushing disappointment to many people. But I can tell you that what I do read, what I can actually see, a lot of kindness, a lot of people thanking me because they are pegging onto me the archetype of fearlessness or fearless leader or, you know, spokesman of whatever. The truth be told, I'm not. It's something I'm working at constantly. And I'd say I would imagine I'm more fearless than the next guy in the main. Or maybe I'm a psychopath. Maybe there's just an aspect of me that has been so butchered in the past that I feel, fuck it, I'm going to take the fight forward because it has to happen. And I've got that sense of natural justice. I can't bear bullies. The thing I despise most in the world is bullies, or any snipers, people who shoot from behind a rock or behind a tree at a moving target. I think that's disgusting, which is why also I don't talk about these the venal little trolls that come at me and other activists, because they represent for me the very worst amongst the human family, as do bullies. Any kind of bullying. Most bullies are limp-wristed, small-decked technocrats and bureaucrats that hide behind the bureaucratic pen, or small fictions hiding behind the badge. And they vent their bitterness, they vent their hatred against good people because they've got the station, they've got the power of the bureaucrat's pen or the technocrat's pen. And that I despise. So where I see that happening, which is everywhere all the time, incidentally, walking down any street anywhere in the world, looking at how people in costume treat common citizens, walking into a post office, walking into a bank, walking into, you know, an airport, and being frisked at the security gates. I mean, all of that stuff is lawlessness. It's illegal. It's highly illegal. It's unlawful. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's a travesty, and we should never ever have permissioned any of it. But we permissioned it, as you know, because of the great deception, the great dream spell of terrorism that was manufactured, concocted, and spat in our face by generationally insane sociopaths who had stolen into the corridors of power in Washington, Rome, and London, Brussels, and elsewhere. But the desecration of natural law, natural justice is all around us all the time. And that enrages me to a point where I become fearless. But I frequently am, I wouldn't say afraid, profoundly apprehensive of certain things before I'm doing them, before I put my head above the parapet or again engage a conversation and gain visibility in a particular arena. There is a deep psychic knot and sleeplessness and fitfulness, which I wouldn't call fear particularly, but it's part of the apparatus of fear for sure, if I'm very honest about it. So I don't pretend that I'm inured to that, but I'm one of those crazies. I'll still throw myself into the fight. And I've done this. I mean, I'm not a big guy, as you can see, but I'm pretty good on the street if I need to. And I've stopped my car multiple occasions when I've seen street brawls, jump out and dive in. And it's just something I do because I don't like harm. I don't like injury. And I like to intercede there. Maybe that makes me a bit of a Jesuit after all.
I resonate with that too, wanting to, you know, jump out and help.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So now when it comes to the Great Awakening and when it comes to the false idolatry that you were talking about, you know, like you said, instead of people going inside or, you know, finding something specific to anchor them into, most people like to look outside and, you know, as you mentioned, you know, rock bands or, movie stars or even politicians, you know. And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on how people are going to respond when they find out that their favorite politicians, you know, the Clintons, the Obamas, are, you know, at the top of it, and you know, the celebrities are at the top of it. You know, all their idols, right? Their American Idol. Like we have our entire culture is set up to, you know, for this, you know, this idolatry, right? These false idols, and you know, there will be a collapse.
Yeah, it's happening right now, today, literally, and it's beautiful. Yep. And to people like me who years ago called it out, called it out years ago, and I'm so happy that 2 years ago, you know, I brought David Seaman from Fulcrum News, the guy who broke the story on Pizzagate, and we brought him into Westminster, into the International Tribunal hearings. And to anyone, I'd urge them, go and look at that. There's a brave guy. There's a brave guy. That's the guy who broke the Pizzagate story, and that story is not going away, baby. That's right. Getting to center ground, but it's not even center ground, because the truth of the matter is that the blood cultism and the harvesting of kids and of young people and the inversion of Kundalini through pedophilic and rape and sodomy of juveniles, infants, the stealing of life force, this Promethean theft that's going on of the life force of millions and millions and millions of young souls, that has gone on for many, many generations. The rape gangs in the priesthood and the nunneries, how the nuns in the Catholic Church have oftentimes been brought into breeding programs, and the priests you know, inseminating them in their black mass rituals, and what's been going on there right in the belly of the whore of Babylon, which is the Vatican and the Catholic Church. But it's not limited to the Catholic Church. It's the leopard cults of Africa. It's within Hinduism and within Buddhism and within all the faiths. And believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I really know this space well. I've spent so many years there. I've met with the leadership in most of these, in fact, in all of these faiths. And I've heard from the inside, from good people on the inside of the house cleaning that is so desperately needed. But to answer your question about the icons, the celebrity icons, well, good, fuck them. It's about time we poured gasoline over Hollywood and set fire to the whole goddamn medley. It's a disgusting, redundant pantheon of filth. And I'm not having a go at good, talented actors and thespians and production people. There are a lot of really good, talented people, and power to them. Beautiful people. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the pantheon, talking about the culture of Hollywood. It's filthy, it's fetid, it's disgusting. So the sooner we put that particular aspect of the dream spell onto auto-destruct, the better. Walt Disney, similarly. Mainstream media, absolutely. The whole goddamn lot needs to be put onto a pyre and immolated. But that's happening anyway. The question you asked was really about the primary idols of the false light attention of hundreds of millions, billions of souls. What is the repercussion, the blowback, the kickback likely to be? Well, at the cultural level, the civilizational level, it's going to be the bitter pill. It's going to be the thing that people puts the world into check, and a recognition of the fact that we have been indentured as plantation slaves to false light worship, mind fuckery, dream spell propaganda for generations. And it is now time to awaken from that dream spell. So to good people who resonate at frequency X, heart and above, it's going to be coming home. It's going to feel like coming home. That revelation, the truth of the auto-destruct of the pantheon of archetypes, is going to be oxygen for the first time at the civilizational cultural level. To those people who are so deeply indentured and stupefied into low frequency shit, and God knows there's a lot of them, they will be pegging their aspirations onto the Barack Obamas, the Clinton global initiatives, the Davoses of this world, the United Nations, all the Red Cross International, you know, they'll be pegging their expectations to all of the dying embers of this generational, satanic, Luciferian, pedophilic class of iconoclasticism, because that's all it ever was just false light worship, Luciferianism in our midst, year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation, millennia after millennia, since pre-Sumerian times, taking us back 6,500 years, and way before that, in point of fact. It's all good. And the nervous breakdown, or the, let's call it the psycho-civilizational nervous breakdown that is coming, that is actually underway right here today, and the Corona COVID vaudeville is testament to that fact, the fact that more than half the people in the world choose to wear muzzles and masks and acquiesce and obey insanity, absence of reason, defiance of logic, consciousness, and conscience. That is the psycho-civilizational breakdown happening in Technicolor right in front of us. So I only caught myself yesterday, after months of being the man who wakes up every day, walks out and goes, what is going on? I mean, what is going on? I mean, can you see yourselves? And I walk around the streets just berating people, humiliating them. And then finally yesterday, I took myself in check and went, you know what? I just clocked something. I'm paying into the dream spell. By even voicing my incredulity at the insanity, I am speaking spells into the field and perpetuating that myth. So how about me simply paying attention to my own words and not just witnessing it, not even having a judgment? Yes, it's insane. It doesn't even need to be spoken to. Withhold all judgment and simply bear witness to the insanity without identifying, without having a comment or any entanglement. Now that, I think, is probably the smart move. It served me well today, put it that way. I'll let you know how philosophy moves.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. So as people are you know, tying their aspirations to these celebrities and these stars and these idols, and they try to be like these people, right? They you know, they will argue over which celebrity is better or worse. You know, my celebrity is better than your celebrity. So what happens when all of our celebrities go down and we have this great leveling of the playing field?
We have an echo chamber. We have the most perfect echo chamber imaginable, where we can only hear the sounds of our own either exasperation or exclamations of joy. Speaking from myself, I've been waiting for this for an awful, awful long time. It's why I've been saying for the last few months, yeah, hallelujah, the last few months since this outbreak began, for me, it was all boding well. There was definitely going to be some scary bumps in the road, and they're almost certainly not over. But I still say, and I still maintain, the geometry of now is perfect, is always perfect, provided one can bear witness to it. Just that. And I'm loving seeing how in that stillness of witness, one can truly see the aspects, unresolved aspects of myself in my own life still coming up on that radar screen. And I'm loving it because it's able to do, we're all of us now able to do that inner work in an externalized way. How do we move out onto the street in good conscience and agree to muzzling ourselves, depleting ourselves of 17 to 20% oxygen, reducing our autoimmune system substantially, and paying obedience and acquiescence to disgusting little codes and statutes dreamt up by pedophilic Satanists in the local council and municipal hall? Why are we acceding to those statutes, codes, and ordinances? Why am I agreeing at any point in the day to acquiescence? That is a question only for me. And I will never blame the system. I will never blame the police or the government. I only look to myself in that and say, well, if I'm choosing to pay the personal income taxes that I know are going to end up being fashioned into bullets that are going to blow the skull off a 4-year-old kid in the Hindu Kush, well, that's me participating in blood cultism, whether I acknowledge that or not. I am absolutely entangled with blood cultism, with genocide, with the harvest of humanity. So I don't pay personal income taxes for that reason. And you set your life up in such a way that you don't need to pay personal income taxes. Business taxes, absolutely. Corporate taxes, go for it. Merchant taxes, that's entirely proper. But I'm just saying, it all comes down to a matter of conscience. And how do we engage ourselves, my right action, my pure truth in my life? Am I choosing to acquiesce? Am I wearing the mask or not? In some places, to avoid disturbance, you wear it on the chin, never on your face. Wear it on your chin and see how far you get. You can pretty much do whatever you want with a mask on your chin, and they won't stop you at the checkpoint because you've got a mask. It's that reductive and that stupid. Going through an airport, you know, they're not going to let you in the airport. So yes, you have to take the mask, wear it on your chin. Or get a medical exemption card, or get your asthma spray and spray it in their face, whatever you need to do. But don't go shopping in places that require it. Absolutely don't play into the hologram. And that's the point.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. So now, do you feel like the Great Awakening is going to be just a natural time in history, or do you think it's going to be a physical event? And what do you think that event's going to be?
What was the start of the question?
The Great Awakening. The Great Awakening that's going to spur the what the Great Awakening is going to be. It's going to be all of us having the same understanding. We're all under the same understanding, so there's nothing to argue about. What's that going to be that we all understand?
Well, that's a singularity event that you're describing. That's the 0 point, or the singularity event that you're describing. But again, it's not something which is going to be extraneous. It will be in as much as lights in the sky and first contact at the collective level with our progenitors of the human race meet with us and visit with us wholesale. But that's already been happening for an awful long time, and many millions of people have had first contact, certainly hundreds of thousands already. And I could speak to that at great length in another conversation very happily. It's a subject which I'm going to be speaking to a great deal more. There's a lot of stuff I know, a lot of stuff I've been involved in that I've not spoken about in this context. I didn't think or feel it was relevant, and I'm personally not.
Can we get into that now? I feel like that would be a great thing to get into at this point.
I'm happy to answer a little bit to that, sure. But just to qualify what you asked me about the singularity event, that is really the atom seed, the quanta of that Christed light that I was talking about, that when it flames, when it hits a morphogenetic threshold, there will be an instantaneous flash point. And that flash point will be the awakening of the vibral quanta within the atom seed of Homo sapiens sapiens. So every single human being will be impacted and affected by that wave. It's not a wave so much coming from out there, although it will also be coming from out there, from the sun. The sun is the great transcoder, a transducer of the wisdom of ages, of the Godhead in the 3D temporal realm. So nothing, as Dan Winters says, nothing comes in or out of this galaxy without going through the sun. Fact. So we've got to accept the fact that the sun is the corridor, it's the conduit, and the field that hits us from the sun at a given point will be carrying those dielectric codes. But really it's more about the paramagnetic codes of the earth and the inner earth that we have sprung from. And once we have brought those codes, the paramagnetic codes, so to speak, the telluric codes, up to a threshold event within our own seat of consciousness, that is the point at which we then put the clarion call out. It's like a pulse wave. Poof, will literally depart the earth and it will be the invitation or the permissions granted for that solar event. And that event will meet us absolutely at that moment. So it'll be a conjugation, a divine conjugation event between the dielectric and the paramagnetic taking place through the quanta of the actualized human beings. So this is the bifurcation. This is where it becomes critical to understand that you must be actualized. You must not acquiesce. You must not breach or abnegate your conscience or your consciousness or your sovereignty any longer. That's what this whole trial and tribulation we're going through is. It is the divination, the bifurcation between the masked and the unmasked, the souled and the unensouled. Those who are placing themselves in a state of readiness for that return to prior unity, and those who are not. And there's no judgment in this. People who are choosing to move into death, disease, decay, oxygen depletion, autoimmune depletion, and entropy, and an absence of conscious, an absence of reason, that is a choice. It's a choice, and it's a beautiful thing. And if they want to move into that pattern, they'll move into dissolution and into space dust, ultimately. I can qualify that statement, incidentally. But that's the fact of the matter, because now is the great bifurcation, and we have to make that determination. So my urgency, and the only reason why I'm consistently banging drums and squeaking and making my blah blah out there, is that call to consciousness and action, not just call to action. Soldiers are called to action. People in the Navy are called to action. I'm not talking about calls to action. I'm talking about consciousness in action, a call to consciousness in action. That is what matters here and now, nothing else. Nothing else.
Great. So back to what you were saying, that I said, let's talk about that. What can you say about that?
You'd have to do a lot better with the question, I'm afraid.
Well, I was trying to get into it in the moment so I could figure out what it was. You weren't specific in what it was that you hadn't been able to talk about yet, but wanted to get into.
Well, what I'm alluding to is at the more in the more general sense. I'm speaking about the fact that the Great Awakening, as you rightly call it, is a communion or a re-communion with the cosmogenetic reality or the cosmogenesis reality of the human story, the seeding of humanity. This is not the first seeding of humanity. There've been multiple seedings, but let's speak about the seeding that we are in temporal flesh. We are the ones living this experience. And it's connected directly, the cosmogenesis is connected to a multiplicity of interventions that have taken place, both at the hyperdimensional level, it has to be said, but at the temporal 3D level as well, with so-called aliens or extraterrestrials, who are invariably not alien at all, but it's just a reductive term that we came up with as a species in our infancy. But the fact of the matter is that the Andromedan and Arcturian and Pleiadian and Draco-Reptilian and Zeta-Reticulan and all of these different aspects. The elephant, avian, there's a multiplicity of animal types. In point of fact, the Hindus can speak to this in great length historically. But we are a hybrid species. The human being, as you know, is a galactic hybrid, a universal hybrid. And we're this for a reason, because we are the point of absolution in this universe. We are the quanta of the Christed light that becomes completely phase coherent with divinity, with the patterns of immanent perfection. At a given point in the closing of cycles, we always return to that point of supremacy where we become Homo sapiens sapient, become completely aligned and phase coherent with the divine. And in that space, we become the most important in a sense and luminescent creatures in this quadrant of the universe. And we then act as the point of absolution and redemption for all the lower forms of expression. And they find their way back to light through us. So the great avatars, the great masters, the great Jedis, the great teachers, the great archetypes of old are embedded in each one of us. That's the Adamic privilege and prerogative, is that it's encoded in your DNA, RNA story, the Christ, the Buddha, the Krishna, all of the archetypes, the Magdalene, all of them, Alexander the Great, it doesn't matter, Socrates, all of the great archetypes keep folding and folding and folding and folding in to the DNA, RNA story, sometimes through mating and coupling and transmission of genetic coding, sometimes not. Oftentimes it's transmission through the quantum, subspace quantum transmission of that same coding, impressions put and gifted to one another. You don't need to have been the product of a mating exercise in order to carry DNA resonance of X, Y, and Z. It can sometimes be broadcast to you and you are phase coherent with it, you're able to receive it. So the point is, we humans are an incredible universal dielectric antenna system. Our DNA is a multidimensional antenna. That's what it is. And each one of us are so incredibly active and capable of receiving transmissions and reception at different dimensional levels, all at the same time. Not just this very limited visible spectrum of light that we inhabit now in having this conversation. I'm conscious as we're having this conversation that I am also playing at many different dimensional states and levels. And the more we relax into that divine nature, the multidimensional aspect of who we truly be and are, we start to feel that language, that different timelines, different entanglements, different dimensional experiences are all taking place at the same time. And only a fairly small and discrete aspect of your soul, your limitless soul, is enchanted into this 3D life expression right now. So I'm sorry for babbling, but I'm trying to take you on a little bit of a journey to get you to also, again, the answer to that singularity. The Great Awakening event horizon, by distinction, is when there's a threshold event with a sufficient number of humans where we activate that flashpoint, which creates a vibral harmonium all at the same time within the atom seed of every living soul on Earth. And that is the true catalyzing event for the so-called ascension. And at that point, we move into an exponentially speeded up exit from the fiction of time. We've already entered that. We've already moved into the tailspin at the end of time, but there will be an absolute departure from time. Remember, the time doesn't truly exist. It's only a utility. It's a galactic or universal tool that it avails itself for a period of itself, meaning to say for a period of time. It exists as a playground, a very limited playground within which the fabric of soul can move through a very necessary and needful formative process or processes. And that's great. And then when you get to the fulmination of that existentialism, it is no longer necessary to be entangled with the fiction of time. And once we recognize that at the collective level, as incidentally the wisdom keepers of the Aboriginal nations have always kept that flame going of timelessness. They do not play in time. They knew, they've always known, and we scorn them and laugh at them because of how primitive they are. But these incredible wisdom keepers have always stepped out of time and remained out of time because they knew that that was the indentureship. That was the plantation slavery. That was where entropy and decay and death got programmed into the story. So in any event, we've reached that point now at the galactic cycle where we are also now about to step out of time at the collective level. And when that happens, we move into the quantum necessarily. And the quantum is all at the same time, everything in the now, without any inhibitions or enclosures or definitions, because that is our true state of being, is to be multifarious and multidimensional, and simply choose where we project plasma and surf to enjoy experience. But in our state of grace, in our immortal, immanent, ineffable state, we only expand and only create and only play and only affirm. There cannot be anything that is outside of affirmation, expansiveness, and creativity. Cannot be.
Amen. And you know, I mean, I'm a big proponent of timelessness. One of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons that we chose to move to Costa Rica, you know, I mean, anybody that knows anything about Costa Rica knows about their Tico time and how they are just, you know, they'll sit on the front porch and check out the view forever. And you know, I feel like it's a really important thing to get back in the center. Sacha, brother, I want to thank you for this interview. I have about 100 more questions that I would love to ask, but I feel like this is a great stopping point, and I feel like you got in deep, and we got in deep fast, and I appreciate you for that. My hat's off to you.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you'd like us to know?
No, I'm all good, Ben. Thank you. And I'm very happy to pick up another conversation and dive further into this cosmogenesis stuff and galactic stuff, because that is really where we're moving very, very quickly. I said at the beginning of this COVID pantomime that out of the end of this tunnel was going to be definitely was going to be disclosure. And of course, that's happened now within 3 months. You know, Washington and what have you, Pentagon have been releasing that. So that's happened. But believe me, it is nothing like what's going to be disclosed. It's very, very exciting where this is all going. And I just invite everyone to just really make that determination internally. Where do you want to place your attention? What world do you want? Because what you place your attention onto now is going to start to manifest at such an incredible rate of knots. It is terrifying. So be very, very mindful and careful about what you're choosing to place attention on. And if you're going to get into the whole subterranean, you know, child sacrificial, blood drinking, adrenochrome harvesting, you know, human trafficking, generational, satanic, Luciferian, Sabbatean, Zionist, blah, blah. Great. Do that. I was doing that 15 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. So I'm not, and I've now had thousands of conversations with people.
When you say you were doing that, you weren't doing the sacrifice, you were learning about it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'll leave you to work that little mystery out for yourself. Obviously, I haven't been involved in that shit. I'm saying I was studying about that stuff and going into those questions and trying to understand why a war was happening in Rhodesia throughout my entire childhood. You know, when you go into these stories and you really research and really go into what's behind war and disease and poverty, then you're forced into realizing, especially with me, because I've had access to leadership pretty much my whole adult life. And so I've never had a problem with getting a meeting with anyone, any king or queen or government or religious leader or whatever. That's been my gift, and I've done it, and I do it well. And what I've learned is that that stuff can take you on a journey where you mentioned earlier the rabbit hole. And what you don't want to do is just focus your attention there. You must. What I did was I went into that space, but at the same time, I split my attention into affirmation and creativity and conjuring up the new earth, which is why I launched the NewEarth project, the NewEarth everything, was because I wanted to go into that deep space, that dark space, have those conversations, do those investigations, meet with the witnesses, meet with the, you know, investigators, and really grapple with that. But I knew it would absolutely break me if I didn't counterbalance it with creativity and affirmation. So I've made a point of balancing International Tribunal of Natural Justice and the work in investigations and balancing it with affirmation and expansiveness and creativity. Then you feel okay about getting up every morning and walking out the front door, and there's a sense of it's going to be okay. But dear God, so many people are making the mistake of just waking up now to the bitter pill and then watching all this dark and turbulent stuff on YouTube, especially whilst people have been sequestered at home for many months. So they're going down these very dark rabbit holes, and it's just folding back in a lot of fearful energy and trauma, because all those stories are variously connected to the real, and they're connected to the trauma field. And so if you are just going on to YouTube and watching that stuff, be careful, man. You're going to imprint your cells, and it's going to come out. It's going to hurt you. You're going to get ill. You're going to get depressive. You're going to get whatever, imbalanced. Be very careful. Go at the same time and do an hour of gardening every day, you know, or whatever you can do that's creative.
Read the Bible. Read the Bible.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely, Ben. Absolutely. Yeah. Whatever is affirmative. Yeah.
Yeah. Great, brother. Thank you so much, Sacha. I'm sure we'll have part 2 coming up soon.
Good. Lovely. Thank you, Ben. Have a good day.
Thanks, Sacha. Have a good one.